Please, we have a quorum, so in 1-2 minutes I will be starting the afternoon session. So please get seated so that we can quietly start our deliberations of the afternoon. Okay, so please get seated. I will start the proceedings now. We have the next agenda item is agenda item 14. Please get seated and quiet down, please. So the next agenda item is agenda item 14 on review of significant trait in specimens of Appendix 2 species. And first we will go to document 14.1, which is the overview of the review of significant trait. The Secretariat has the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document AC32 Doc 14.1 was produced by the Secretariat, and it updates the Animals Committee on the status of the Review of Significant Trait, or RST, process. An updated overview of all cases since the 31st meeting of the Animals Committee is set out in Annex 1 of the document, with notes on reviews that were undertaken since AC31, as reported to SC74 and SC75. A summary of all range state species combinations for fauna that are subject to a recommendation to suspend trade under RST, or for which the review process is currently ongoing, is included in Annex 2. The document also provides an overview of the implementation of decisions 17.108 RevCop 18, that should be RevCop 19, to 17.110 RevCop 19. On the development of an RST tracking and management database, a user-friendly guide to RST, and a comprehensive training module on RST respectively. So concerning these decisions, the Secretariat is pleased to inform the Committee that the RST tracking and management system was launched by the Secretariat at a side event during COP19, making it publicly available to all CITES parties and interested stakeholders. The Secretariat also published notification to the parties number 2023/22 on the 2nd of March 2023. And this invited parties to provide feedback on the tracking and management system and the draft user manual by the 30th of April 2023. To date, feedback has been received from Canada and the United States of America, and parties are encouraged to provide additional feedback to the Secretariat when they use this database. And another new initiative is work to provide French and Spanish versions of the database is now underway, and they should be available to parties in the coming months. So the Animals Committee is invited to note document AC32, Doc 14.1, and this oral update. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat, for this update. So I open the floor for any comments to members of the committee. I see North America has asked for the floor. North America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Preparing for the Plants and Animals Committee discussions of the review of significant trade in specimens of Appendix 2 species provide a good opportunity to fully explore the functionality and content of the new RST tracking and management system. Unfortunately, it was not feasible to provide feedback prior to the April 30 response date of notification to the parties number 2023/22, requesting input on the tracking system and user's guide. As we mentioned during Plans Committee, we would like to propose that additional input be sought following the meetings of the scientific committees. To this end, the Animals Committee could request Secretariat to issue a second notification so that parties having now used the database to prepare for the meetings can provide more insightful comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, North America. Any other member wanting to take the floor? I don't see any, so observer parties. United States, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The United States commends the Secretariat for the work that's been done. We would just seek a clarification because we had noticed there was an issue with Togo and Varanus in the review, in the overview, and want to confirm that this issue has been addressed and corrected. Thank you.
Yes, I give the floor to the Secretariat, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the United States of America for bringing this to our attention a few weeks ago. This concerned the quota for Varanus ornatus from Togo, and the issue has been corrected today and should be reflected on the export quota tool on the website. So, and again, not just to the United States, but to other parties, if you notice any issues, then please do bring them to our attention so that we can remedy them as quick as possible. So thank you, US.
Thank you, Secretariat. Another observer party wishing to take the floor on this issue? I don't see anybody asking for the floor. Observer organizations? I see UNEP WCMC asking for the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to congratulate you on your re-election as Chair and thank the Government of Switzerland for hosting the meeting. We would just like to announce that a new section within the Species Plus database called CITES processes has been developed with support from the European Union. This includes those species currently included in the review of significant trade process and directly links to the relevant case within the CITES review of significant trade tracking and management system referred to in document 14.1. This new section of Species Plus also includes any cases included in the first iteration of the review of trade in animal specimens reported as bred in captivity under Resolution 17.7, RevCop 19, and whether those cases are ongoing or closed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, WCMC, for making us aware of this possibility to look at these issues and find them mainly. So thank you very much. Any other observer organization? Okay, so I think we can note the document, and I think it would be a good place also if the Animals Committee would ask the Secretariat to do a new notification and asking again for feedback on the tracking system, just so that you really get the feedback you need to assess it. Okay. So now we can turn to document AC 32, 14.2. It's also on review of significant trade. It's about the selection of new species, country combinations, and I would give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. Document AC 32, Doc 14.2 was written by submitted by the Secretariat, and it presents reports by UNEP WCMC, which were produced in accordance with paragraph 1A of Resolution Conf 12.8 Rev Cop 18 on review of significant trade in specimens of Appendix 2 species. Based on trade data for the period 2017 to 2021, the reports provide a summary from the CITES trade database of annual report statistics found in Annex 1 and an extended analysis of trade to inform the preliminary selection of species country combinations found in Annex 2. The data used to prepare this summary are available in Excel format in Information Documents 1 and 2. So based on all of this information, the Animals Committee is invited to select a limited number of species country combinations of greatest concern for inclusion in Stage 2 of the review of significant trade. And as this is the first time that new cases for review have been selected since 2017, the Secretariat would like to briefly recall the provisions of Resolution Conf 12.8, Rev Cop 18, concerning this exercise, and also to outline what the next steps will be for those species country combinations that will be selected at this meeting. So the Animals Committee, together with the Standing Committee and in cooperation with the Secretariat, is directed to play a key role in the implementation of Resolution Conf 12.8 Rev Cop 18. And this resolution concerns trade in specimens traded under source codes W, or U, Y, and blank, as defined in paragraph 3R of Resolution Conf 12.3 Rev Cop 19 on permits and certificates. So the main task for the Animals Committee to do at this meeting is set out in paragraph 1B of the resolution, which states that on the basis of recorded levels of direct exports and information available to the Animals or Plants Committee, the Secretariat, parties or other relevant experts, a limited number of species country combinations of greatest concern shall be included in Stage 2 of the review process by the Animals or Plants Committee at their first regular meeting following a meeting of the Conference of the Parties. Paragraph 2 of the resolution states, directs the Standing Committee to address problems identified in the course of the review process that are not related to the implementation of Article 4, Paragraph 2A, 3 or 6A, in accordance with other provisions of the Convention and relevant resolutions. So to explain what happens next after this meeting, following the selection of cases for review, the Secretariat shall, within 30 days of the end of this meeting, notify the selected range states that their species has been selected, will provide an overview of the review process and an explanation for that selection. The Secretariat will request the range states to provide the scientific basis by which it is established that exports from their country are not detrimental to the survival of the species concerned and are compliant with Article 4, paragraphs 2A, 3 and 6A of the Convention. In this letter, the Secretariat will provide guidance to range states on how to respond, explain the consequences of not responding to the request, and inform the range states that their responses will be made available on the CITES website as part of the agenda for meetings of the Animals or Plants Committee. And range states will be given 60 days to respond to the consultation from the Secretariat. The Secretariat will also compile or appoint consultants to compile a report about the biology and management of and trade in the species selected, including any relevant information provided by the range states, and this will be made available for the next meeting of the Animals or Plants Committee. And in doing so, the Secretariat or their consultants shall actively engage with the range states and relevant experts in the compilation of the report. So all of this information, the responses from the range state, the detailed report on the biology of the species, will be reviewed at the next meeting of the Animals Committee, when it will be determined which cases are less concern and for which action is needed. And those considered less concern shall be removed from the process, while recommendations will be formulated for those where action is needed. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I think it's important to keep in mind this process and for those who are not familiar with it, that's why I've asked the Secretariat to present them so that we are all on the same page what we are asked to be doing. And in relation to the term limited number of cases, I have asked the chairs of this working group to aim for 20 cases, which means 20 cases where we have actual real conservation concerns about the numbers that we are seeing. As I said also at the beginning, we have now waited several years to do it again. We are eager to go, but we still have to think that the Secretariat has to be working on all these cases. So it's quite a workload that we are putting on the Secretariat. That's why I asked the chairs to aim for 20 species country combinations in this analysis. So what we are asked to do is establish an in-session working group. But before we do that, I open the floor for any comments or questions that you may have. So, members of the Animals Committee? Don't see anybody. Observer parties? I see Mexico and then Panama.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chair. We'd like to thank the Secretariat and UNEP WCMC for the work put and the information in the annex. In Mexico, the harvesting of wild specimens requires a necessary study and evidence that shows that it's sustainable. On the basis of CITES listed species that come from the wild, we must also have an NDF issued by the scientific authority. In Annex 2 of document 14.2, you can see 10 species that meet 2 or more criteria and that are reported from Mexico. The exports of humpback whale, the kerry turtle, and are shown in the information document 1, and they cover the information of the trade without risk for the species. For the silky shark, the hammerhead shark, and the dark shark, they are all covered by NDFs with the best scientific information on their populations, an analysis on vulnerability and models of the maximum sustainable harvesting, and the protocols for the issuance of NDFs and the protocols set out for sustainable use are set out on our web page, and we are willing and looking forward to sharing experiences at the next NDF workshops. We implement traceability through our protocols with temporary bans, fishery protection zones, and the refusal of fishing permits and control of fishing gear in certain zones and specific times. We work on trade with research projects to ensure that we cover data on capture, harvesting, and use. We also apply minimum capture size and certain other harvesting criteria. Bearing in mind the following, what we have said, we would like for an exclusion of the Mexican populations of these species from the RST, and we would like to participate in the working group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. I didn't want to interrupt you, but basically that's the kind of statement you will maybe making or be able to make in the working group when we look at the cases really. So if I open the floor for other parties, please bear in mind that you will have the possibility to talk about cases or about the data that are being presented that will be discussed in the working group. So now is not the time to defend your case. You can do that in the working group that will be formed. So if you have general comments on the document, please do so, but it's not the place at the moment to defend your specific case. Just to make that clear. I've seen Panama. Do you still want to have the floor? Okay, Panama, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chair. As it's the first time that Panama is taking the floor, we are grateful for the work carried out to develop this meeting and hold it, and we'd also like to congratulate those who have organized it in order to achieve our goals in favor of wildlife. I am talking about the document that was prepared for the 31st meeting of the Animals Committee and the concern of products of shark and rays who are listed in CITES. And these are species that have been listed for many years, and so we think it is timely to recognize them as priority species at this meeting when the species country combinations are selected. So we would like to be part of the working group if it should be set up. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe a short bracket, sharks. There will be a shark working group who will look at these data, and we have timed the meeting of that working group so that the deliberations in the shark working group on the numbers and species that may be selected is before the working group on RST. And so the work that will be done in the shark working group will feed back directly into the deliberations of the RST working group. Just so that this is clear, that we don't have any questions around how do we deal with sharks in the RST at this meeting. Okay? Brackets closed. Maldives? Yes, Maldives, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The Maldives has submitted a document of relevance to both Agenda 14 and 37 in response to Conf Res 12.6, Rev COP 18, Conf Res 12.8, Rev COP 18, and elements of decisions 9.222 to 9.227 on sharks and rays with full consideration of CITES COP 19, document 65. We look forward to raise this issue at the working group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Japan has asked for the floor. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first time we take the floor. Japan joins congratulating Chair and Vice Chairs being re-elected and thank the Secretariat and Switzerland for organizing this meeting. Japan would like to show our appreciation to the tremendous work done by the Secretariat on this agenda item. And we will need a lot of discussion to shortlist the proper candidate for species. But taking this opportunity, we share our general view regarding the proposed list of new species in Annex 2 to this document. for review of significant trade. They are proposed some species which were recently listed in CITES appendices, in particular at COP18 in 2019. Our view is that such species cannot be under sufficient scrutiny on trade records because of short period after being listed in appendices, and believe that we cannot say that these species meet the criteria for additional species for review. We would hope this view is going to be well taken into account over the course of the discussion, by which we can reduce the candidate species significantly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. We are well aware of these short timelines. It's just that the analysis still puts these, produces these species as well that are just a short time on, but it will be taken note of or discussed in the working groups, surely. Then I have the United States. US, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The United States wishes to note that we understand your need for the aim to have a reasonable number of cases selected for RST, such as your suggestion of 20 cases. But we understand that this is not a firm limit set by the resolution. For example, if the working group, given that we haven't selected species since 2017, should come up with 22 cases of conservation concern, we hope that we could possibly consider the 22 and not make the 20 a firm limit. We just want to note that. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. You heard the way I said it. I asked the chairs to aim for 20. Okay, I have China. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first time that China is talking the floor. We would like to congratulate on your and the Vice Chair's re-election. Thank you to Switzerland and hosting the meeting. We note that there are some obvious mistakes indeed. In Table 2 of the Annex 1 for gross direct export 2070-2021 reports as source W, I, X, and U, all with no source reported. For example, we found that in the tables of the Docket 15.1, China is shown to export 506 live species in 2021. However, the fact is that China did not export any single living species in that year. Another example, 70,000 kilogram had short export were recorded as fine and meat, and the export date of the 20,000 kilogram should be pre-conviction while wrongly recorded as wide. We would like to see the data verified by the Secretariat and the parties before proceeding further. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, China, for these comments. I think this is also something you will be able to raise when I think it was about sharks, when the sharks will be treated in the working group. So thank you for this input. We have DRC. DRC, you have the floor.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the floor. Since this is the first time my country is speaking, I'd like to congratulate you for your election and for your able handling of this discussion. And I will provide my support to you and the other officers throughout your terms of office. I'd also like to commend and thank the Swiss government for their hospitality in hosting this meeting, and I thank the Secretariat for everything they have done to ensure that the meeting would run smoothly. Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned by the increasing number. Here you said that you're going to try to make a realistic selection of species that will be included in the new country species combinations, but there's also a large number of species of less concern. Perhaps the Secretariat could explain why we are taking up these species of lesser concern in this list. There are even species which have not even been assessed by IUCN. If you look at the list, you will see what I mean. I think that the working group, in the working group, we will provide all the necessary information for some of the species for which our country has mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, DRC. I give this floor to the Secretariat to respond to your question.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for all the points that have been raised here. And I think it's very clear that everybody is aware that this is quite a big task for the Animals Committee to do. So in consultation, the co-chairs have requested the Secretariat to work with them to try to narrow down the list of species that meet more than one criterion. So looking at Table 3 and Annex 2 of the document, to produce a table with all of the, I think it's 80 species in total that are meeting more than one criterion, but also to look at the sort of issues that you have, several of you have raised here in relation to species that have only been selected, only been included in the CITES appendices for a short time, and so there's very limited data. So these might be considered to be removed at an initial stage. Other cases where there are species that are already ongoing in the RST process. We have several examples of that. And we will produce a table with all of these observations that will be distributed to all the members of the working group, either later tonight, once it is struck, later tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. And then you will have time to have a look at that shortlist. Not a shortlist, it will be the long list, it will include everything, but there will be information as to justify whether those cases could be excluded. And we hope that this will help to speed up the process, rather than having to go through everything, line by line. It's quite a large task. So just to explain that those of you who do join this working group, you will be provided with this table that will assist you in this process. There may well be some other cases that parties want to suggest for inclusion that were not pulled out of the analysis, so they may only meet one criterion, and they can be proposed for inclusion in this exercise as well at the working group. So I hope that clarifies the situation, and as I said, those of you who are joining will get this table to help you in your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat, for this clarification. I don't see any other observer party asking for the floor. So I would turn to observer organizations. I see Africa alternate, you have asked for the floor?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I asked for the floor earlier, but I guess you didn't see me. Coming to the species of concern and sharks, as Panama said earlier, a lot of species were listed some time ago. And there has been no RST The hammerhead shark is one example. There are also rays species. I think the working group could decide. There's also the oceanic whitetip. Whether there is significant trade. If so, I think it would be important to include these in the combinations. Thank you.
Thank you, Africa. I think that's exactly what we will be doing, as I explained in the whole process. So, observer organizations, please be brief if you want to say something, because we will need to speed up a bit, because we still have a lot to do this afternoon. So I see HSI.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief response to the comment about species that are listed have not yet been assessed by IUCN. I'd point out there are many species that have not been assessed by IUCN, not because they are not rare or not under any threat, but simply because the information may perhaps not available, the reviewers weren't available. Some other assessments, I know the case of some of the turtles, for example, the assessments are now many years old and may not reflect the current trade situation. So I do not think that we should be wedded to the IUCN figures as an observation. If there is good information that is more recent or instead of what IUCN might provide, that should be considered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, HSI. I think this is well taken note of. So I think with this, I would like to strike that working group, and I would first read out the terms of reference. The working group shall, in accordance with paragraph 1b of Resolution Conf 12.8 Rev Cop 18, A. Review the information contained in the annexes to document AC32, Doc 14.2, as well as any additional available information, and B. Recommend a limited number of species country combinations of greatest concern for inclusion in stage 2 of the review of significant trade and an explanation of for the selection. So with this, and before I ask for participation, I think it's important to note that we have organized the working groups in a way that if you will be member of the review of significant trade working group, you can also later be a member of the working group on captive breeding, because we have arranged the meetings of the working group so that they do not overlap, just to make that clear. Okay, so let's go to, yes? Okay, so now we will strike the working group. I'm asking members and all alternates whether they want to be part of this working group. Please raise your flag. Nomenclature specialist, Oceania, Central, South and South America and the Caribbean. I always struggle with that region. Sorry about that. Nothing personal. Asia. Okay. North America also. Europe, yeah. Then observer parties. would like to be? Okay. Well, why don't we say you can all stay in this room? Huh? But it's okay. Malaysia, Maldives, Mexico, Panama, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Namibia, Portugal, Peru, no, I need the glasses, South Africa, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Brazil, then we have Austria, India, Indonesia, Israel, Japan, Australia, Singapore, Argentina, Germany, France, European Union, Zimbabwe, Saudi Arabia, DRC, Russian Federation, Czech Republic, Croatia, United States, Tanzania, Colombia, UK, China, United Arab Emirates, Canada, Thailand, and Cambodia. Yes, I think, oh, Kuwait, yes. Okay. Then observer organizations, I will try to read them out slowly. Conservation Force, Oceana, Ornamental Fish International, Dallas Safari Club, UNEP WCMC, Defenders of Wildlife, Parrot Breeder Association of Southern Africa, FAO, Pro Vision Reef, WCS, Pro Wildlife, CIC, Safari Club International, IUCN, WWF, Save Our Seas Foundation, Zoological Society of London, ADM Capital Foundation, German Society of Herpetology, Florida International University, Global Guardian Trust, Society for Wildlife and Nature International, South African Taxidermy and Tannery Association, HSI, Organization of Professional Aviculturists, Indonesian Coral Shell and Ornamental Fish Association, SUCO, Association of Southeastern State Fish and Wildlife Agencies, IFAW, Sustainable Users Network, and Association of Western State Fish and Wildlife Agencies, International Fur Federation, the Blue Resources Trust, IWMC, FACE, Association of Zoos and Aquariums, Marine Watch International, BirdLife International, Traffic, Bloom Association, Whale and Dolphin Conservation, and Born Free USA, Center of Biological Diversity, and that's it. Okay, we'll make the counts and come back to you. Okay, we have 47 parties and members and 44 observer organizations, so I think we don't have to amend anything. So that's going to be the working group, and they will meet on Wednesday. And chairs will be a representative of North America, Ezekiel, and a representative of Europe, Dagmar. Yes? Okay, good. North America, did you ask for the floor? Oh, okay. Okay, so this concludes agenda item 14 for the moment, and we can turn our attention to agenda item 15 on captive bred and ranch specimens. We have 3 documents, and my intention is to introduce them all together, and as they all concern selection of species, I will want them to be discussed in detail at the working group. So after they are being introduced, maybe there may be parties who are directly concerned who may make a short statement, but the bulk of the discussion will happen in the working group, not in plenary, because otherwise we will end up nowhere. So my intention is to present all documents one after the other and then seek comments on all 3 of them. So 15.1 is review of trade in animal specimens reported as produced in captivity, and I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. So the Animals Committee, together with the Standing Committee and in cooperation with the Secretariat, is directed to play a key role in the implementation of Resolution Conf 17.7, Rev Cop 19, on review of trade in animal specimens reported as produced in captivity. This resolution concerns trade in specimens traded under source codes C, D, F, or OR, as defined in paragraph 3 or of Resolution Conf 12.3 Rev Cop 19 on permits and certificates. The main task for the Animals Committee to do at this meeting is set out in paragraph 2C of the resolution, which states that the Animals Committee may select a limited number of species country combinations for review, taking into account the biology of the species, for which it should draft general or specific questions and a brief explanation of the selection to be addressed by the Secretariat to the parties concerned in accordance with Stage 2, subparagraph 2G. In drafting these questions, the committee may wish to consider the outputs from document AC 29, COM 11, as revised by the Secretariat. When selecting species country combinations to review under this resolution, The committee should be mindful of paragraph 2F of the resolution, which states that the Animals Committee should not select species country combinations where the Standing Committee has already entered a dialogue with the country concerned over the use of source codes C, D, F, or under another compliance process. In addition, paragraph 2H of the resolution directs the Animals Committee to determine for which species it should request the Secretariat to commission short reviews of known information relating to the breeding biology and captive husbandry, and any impacts, if relevant, of removal of founder stock from the wild. And the number of such reviews that can be commissioned will depend on external funding, and so the committee therefore may wish to list such requests in order of priority. In addition, any urgent enforcement matters identified in the course of the review at the present meeting should be referred to the Secretariat and the country concerned in accordance with paragraph 2E of the resolution and subsequently reported to the Standing Committee. So following the activities just mentioned, the Secretariat shall, within 30 days at the end of this meeting, notify the country or countries concerned that species produced in captivity in their country have been selected for review. We will provide them with an overview of the review process and an explanation for the selection provided by the Animals Committee. The Secretariat shall ask the country or countries to provide information or respond to general or specific questions developed by the Animals Committee within specified deadlines to be agreed in consultation with the chair of the Animals Committee. But for this initial consultation, it should be at least 60 days for the countries to respond. The Secretariat would also like to draw attention to paragraph 21, which notes that with respect to the implementation of Decision 19.63, funding has been secured from Switzerland for the Secretariat to work with UNEP WCMC to produce a comparative analysis of the objectives and the processes outlined in Resolution Conf 17.7 on the review of trade in specimens reported as produced in captivity, and Resolution Conf 12.8 Rev Cop 18 on the review of significant trade in specimens of Appendix II species. Based on this analysis, the Secretariat will draft recommendations on how these two resolutions could become more streamlined and better aligned with each other, including possible amendments to one or both resolutions. During this process, the Secretariat will consult with the chair of the Animals Committee and the leads assigned by the Animals Committee in its work plan for both resolutions during this process. The report and recommendations will be submitted to the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee for its consideration. So in conclusion, the Animals Committee is invited to A, taking into account the analysis presented in the annex to this document, 1, select a limited number of species country combinations for review, 2, prepare a brief explanation of the criteria used to justify each selection, and 3, draft general or specific questions for the country selected for review. B, determine and prioritise for which species a request should be made for the commissioning of a short review of the breeding biology, captive husbandry and any impacts, if relevant, of removal of founder stock from the wild, as described in paragraph 14 of the present document. And lastly, to identify any urgent enforcement matters which need the attention of the Secretariat, the country concerned, and/or the Standing Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Classic false start. Yes, thank you for the presentation of this document. And as I said, I would like to continue with the next document to be introduced, which is document AC32, Doc 15.2 on captive breeding of spiny-tailed lizard. Secretary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document AC32, Doc 15.2 was prepared by the Secretariat and contains a report on captive breeding of spiny-tailed lizards, specifically 3 species, Ceratophora stodartii, Ceratophora aspera, and Lyriocephalus scutatus, that the World Conservation Monitoring Centre of the United Nations Environment Programme, or UNEP-WCMC, has prepared, thanks to a financial contribution from the United States of America. The report includes information on breeding biology, breeding in captivity, prevalence in zoos, evidence of commercial breeding, and consultations with Species 360, trade associations, and a number of countries where evidence indicated that the species are bred. This report was originally presented to the 31st meeting of the Animals Committee in May-June of 2021 in the annex to document AC31 Doc 19.2. However, as you will be aware, the Animals Committee agreed to postpone discussion on the selection of new species country combinations for review until after the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, when the Animals Committee could meet in person. So decision 18.175 was renewed at COP19, and the report produced under decision 18.174, which is found in the annex to this document, is hereby resubmitted to the Animals Committee for its consideration. The Animals Committee is invited to consider the report in the annex to the present document and determine whether any of the 3 species country combinations should be selected for review under Resolution Conf 17.7 Rev COP 19 in accordance with paragraph 2C of the resolution. And if so, prepare a brief explanation of the reason for each selection and draft general or specific questions for the countries selected for review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat, for presentation of this document. I would now turn to the United States to introduce document AC32 Doc 15.3. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States is pleased to present document AC32 Doc 15.3, exceptional case for inclusion of species country combination in review of trade in animal specimens reported as produced in captivity, Macaca fascicularis. M. fascicularis has been included in Appendix 2 since 1977. In March 2022, the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species assessment was revised from vulnerable to endangered with a decreasing population trend. The species is the predominant species in international trade in live primates for research. At its 29th meeting in July 2017, in accordance with Stage 1 of the process outlined in Resolution Comp 17.7, the Animals Committee selected a number of species country combinations for review, including M. fascicularis Cambodia, due to concerns that specimens were not being bred in captivity in accordance with Resolution Conf 10.16. At its 30th meeting in July 2018, the Animals Committee reviewed the report of the Secretariat to determine if the trade was in accordance with the provisions of Article 3 and Article 4 of the Convention, as well as Article 7, paragraphs 4 and 5. In the course of its discussions at AC30, the Animals Committee determined that for some species selected at AC29, the trade in specimens with source codes C, D, F, or R was in compliance with the requirements of the Convention, and those species country combinations were excluded from the review. Among those that were excluded from the review at AC30 was M. fascicularis Cambodia. The species has also been reviewed under the review of significant trade, and although M. fascicularis is no longer included under the RST, concerns were raised with regard to population studies, harvest of wild specimens, tagging and tracking systems used to distinguish between wild and captive bred specimens, and illegal trade in the species. The overwhelming majority of live M. fascicularis in trade are identified as captive bred, source code C, or born in captivity, source code F. And Cambodia, China, Mauritius, Vietnam, and Thailand are the 5 largest exporting countries for the period 2012 through 2021, as reported by exporting parties in CITES annual reports. The United States is one of the largest importers of live M. fascicularis for biomedical research, and based on our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Law Enforcement Management Information System data, the United States annually imported an average of 29,000 individual animals per year for the period 2018 through 2022. In November 2022, the U.S. Department of Justice charged 8 individuals with smuggling M. fascicularis from Cambodia into the United States, with the indictment alleging that defendants conspired over a nearly 5-year period to acquire thousands of wild-caught macaques and launder them through captive breeding facilities to export to the United States and elsewhere, falsely labeled as bred in captivity. In light of the 2022 reclassification by IUCN as M. fascicularis as endangered, the sustained high levels of exports of the species reported as produced in captivity, and recent indications of large-scale laundering of wild-caught specimens through captive breeding facilities, the United States believes that it would be appropriate, as an exceptional case, in accordance with the process outlined in Resolution Comp 17.7, to include the species in Stage 2 of the review process, or alternatively, include specific species country combinations as appropriate, with particular attention on the species country combination of M. fascicularis Cambodia. Given the changing export patterns for the species, the concerns with regard to the status of wild populations within the species' native range, we further suggest that the committee may wish to consider grounds for including the species throughout its range in the review. We note that an in-session working group will be convened at this meeting to select species country combinations for review under Resolution Comp 17.7, and believe that the in-session working group could also consider this matter in its deliberations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. So now I would open the floor for any short comments on these 3 matters. And as also suggested by the United States, I think all 3 documents have the aim to select species under this process. So I think that all these 3 documents can be dealt with, discussed in a working group that looks at the selection of species country combinations under Resolution 17.7. So I open the floor for any short comments. Members of the committee, North America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. In reference to document 15.2, on behalf of the North American region, we appreciate the report of the 3 agave lizard species endemic to Sri Lanka. We share the concerns voiced by Sri Lanka at COP19, and in particular regarding the origin of founder stock for captive breeding operations. As Sri Lanka has pointed out, no native reptiles had been exported from Sri Lanka for nearly 30 years, and exports prior to that were from non-commercial or scientific purposes only. Additionally, at least 2 of these 3 species are difficult to breed in captivity. It is unfortunate that the 2021 assessment was not updated with more recent information for this meeting. But nevertheless, we believe that it will be appropriate to consider inclusion of these species in the review on the Resolution Conf 17.7 Rev Cop 18 on review of trade in animal species report as produced in captivity. We think the concerns expressed by Sri Lanka merit the inclusion of these species as part of the review. I'm referring to COP. And also, in reference to document 15.3, the North American region supports considering the information on Macaca fascicularis presented in document 15.3, as well as that presented by range countries, in the in-session working group for species country combinations for review on the Resolution 17.7 Rep COP 19 on review of trade in animal species report as produced in captivity will be addressed and select, if appropriate, to be included in stage 2 of the review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, North America. I see Asia has asked for the floor. Asia, you have the floor.
Thank you for the floor. We would like to comment on the document 15.3. As the document presented in the tables, the number of the long-tail macaque that used for commercial purpose with the source code C, D, F, or R from 2012 to 2021. If there is any information disparity on data or miss of the data from the range state, we would like to hear, as well as the Indonesians confirm what the number of the species that traded from 2012 to 2021. So if there is from 5 biggest country using that animal for the commercial purpose will have any data or confirmation, I think it will be good in the working group or in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Asia. No more comments from members, but I have heard support of the proposed way forward so far. I open the floor for observer parties. I see Mexico. Mexico, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. On document 15.1, we thank the Secretariat and UNEP WCMC for the information put together in the annexes. We see that table 6 of the annex mentions 4 species that meet criteria 1I and which report trade from Mexico. That includes 2 species of tarantulas, and that they meet the provisions of CITES. We've also seen differences between the figures for authorized exports by the Mexican authorities and the information from UNEP WCMC. So we would ask for the Mexican populations of these 4 species to be excluded from the review of species of specimens said to be produced in captivity. We observe that in the various tables there is trade reported of another 19 species, of which Mexico is a range state, some of which are endemic and for which there is no evidence of imports, and that there are difficulties for breeding them in captivity. We would like to know what information that is provided by exporting countries of their parent stock, and we would also like to join the working group that will be established. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. We're not looking at the single cases now. This is really the work that we will be doing in the working group tomorrow afternoon. So just for other parties, we're not looking into the details of the tables now. But if you have general comments, please do so now. I see Cambodia has asked for the floor. Cambodia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cambodia would like to make some comment on the agenda item 15.3 submitted by the United States, withdraw our concern. We disagree with the agenda item concerning review in trades in animal species produced in captivity, particularly long-tail macaques. We therefore wish to offer some observation to the committee here. In fact, the long-tailed macaque is a common and widespread species throughout many parts of the world, including Cambodia. In some locations in southern Cambodia, population of the species has increased to the extent that the growing number represents serious agricultural pests, and incidents to humans frequently require local government to intervene to reduce the numbers and minimize the conflict. Currently, there are hundreds of millions of people that benefit from the scientific research and advance in the development of fast-track life-saving vaccines and medicine using long-tailed macaque as non-human primate. As such, any traits in animal species would not cause any harm but contribute to biomedical research. Indeed, wide view individuals and their animals advocacy organizations utilize emotional advocacy language primaries designs to benefit their own agenda, we believe that their intent was to manipulate and mislead the general public with misinformation and argument, which lack both scientific objectives and rigor at a time when biomedical research is in high demand for obvious humanitarian reasons. Why other countries have chosen to withhold their commitment, Cambodia has maintained its supplies of its long-tail markets to advance the development of a vaccine. Moreover, Cambodia truly adheres to principles of moral responsibilities, humanitarian equalities, and affordable medicine, and a medicine for billions of people, and strictly comply with national, international law, regulation, and required procedures globally, especially the CITES conventions and international health regulation. Due to the necessity of using long-tail market for biomedical research, we urge the committees not to consider the agenda proposed by the United States. The trade in live animal species produced in captivity should be continued as long as it carried out in responsible and sustainable manner. I thank you.
Thank you, Cambodia, for your statement. I think you will be able to do that also again in the working group when we discuss the document submitted by the United States more in detail. Thank you very much. I see China has asked for the floor. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. For the document 15.3, we concurred with Cambodia on this issue. People and the states are and should be the best protector of their wild fauna and flora. The opinion of the range state should be fully respected. China is concerned that the main basis of the U.S. proposal is the illegal export of long-tailed macaque from Cambodia, which, as a matter with a very clear trade issue, should not be extended to all range states. Without sufficient justification, China suggests that U.S. and Cambodia address this specific issue through bilateral communication. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, China. No other parties are asking for the floor. So I will give a short possibility for observer organizations to be pretty quick, please. I see, oh. I can't read it, okay. Suko, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to make a brief intervention. In the essence of time, kindly consider all protocol observed, as this is the first time as we are taking the floor. I'd like to congratulate the Secretariat for the hard work done, but as Newton's third law says, to every action there's always an equal and opposite reaction. A significant increase in the trade of specimens declared as captive produced from either source code C, D, F, and R should be supported either by an increase in breeding stock of captive-bred species, alleviating the pressures of wild populations, or a decrease in wild species populations. The aim of CITES is to ensure that the international trade in specimens of wild animals and plants does not threaten the survival of the species. It is therefore on behalf of SUCA that we believe that the trade data on captive-bred specimens should be correlated with data or population trends of species in the wild. Otherwise, this data could be lopsided and provide a false negative result and be detrimental to decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you, Suko, for raising this issue. I now have European Animal Research Association. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The United States seeks to invoke the exceptional case provision for Resolution 2, Conference 17.7, to include long-tail macaques in Stage 2 of the review process. Alternatively, as we just heard, to focus attention on specific species-country combinations with attention to Cambodia. The United States, as we just heard, cites the following evidence in support of its request: the 2022 classification by IUCN of long-tailed macaques as endangered. Secondly, sustained high levels of exports of the species reported as produced in captivity. And thirdly, recent indications of large-scale laundering of wild-caught specimens through captive breeding. The European Animal Research Association, our members, is concerned that this recommendation is based on incorrect and misleading evidence, and if adopted, the proposed action has the potential to seriously disrupt biomedical research, life-saving research in Europe. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to briefly elaborate on these 3 points. Firstly, the 2022 IUCN assessment is itself unsupported by available scientific evidence. Information relied on in the 22 IUCN assessment is often misrepresented and misquoted, and we're happy to provide more information. We are aware that certain organisations recently submitted a petition to the IUCN seeking a reassessment of the species' conservation status. Secondly, contrary to the claim that imports of long-tailed macaques for biomedical research are contributing to a decline in wild populations, the US CDC data indicate that imports of the species into the United States have declined. I'll say it again, have declined. A total of 32,000 specimens were imported during the pre-COVID period from October 2018 to September 2019. Annual imports have fallen by 23%, 6% and 3% respectively for the 3 subsequent years from 2019 to 2022. Finally, EU and its members are aware of the allegations brought by the US government against certain parties, but we are not aware that any of these allegations have been proven in court. Mr. Chairman, the long-tailed macaques does not constitute a conservation priority. Initiating actions as requested by the United States is not warranted, and we oppose such action. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I will allow one last intervention from HSI.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm not going to comment specifically on the status of the long-tailed macaque. That is another matter. The thing is that I think that some people here are forgetting what this review is supposed to be about. This is a review about whether or not countries are misusing codes involving captive breeding in order to avoid certain CITES requirements. If that is indeed happening, the issue is not whether the species is rare, the species is endangered, it is whether countries are fulfilling their requirements under the treaty or are flaunting them. And that is the question that we should be addressing in the context of this review. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, HSI. I think that concludes the initial discussion of this topic. I think it will be there will be time to discuss it more in detail. So I would propose to establish an in-session working group to cover items 15.1, 15.2 and 15.3 with the following terms of reference. Taking into account document AC32 15.1 and its annexes, document AC32, document AC32 doc 15.2 and document AC32 doc 15.3, the working group shall select a limited number of species country combinations for review, prepare a brief explanation of the criteria used to justify each selection, draft general or specific questions for the countries selected for review, determine and prioritize for which species a request should be made for the commissioning of a short review of the breeding biology, captive husbandry and any impacts, if relevant, of removal of founder stock from the wild, and E, identify any urgent enforcement matters which need attention of the Secretariat, the country concerned, and or the Standing Committee. So that's the mandate of this working group. It will be chaired by myself, and we are now looking for members for this working group. First, I would ask the members of the Animals Committee whether they want to be represented in the working group. I see nomenclature specialist, Oceania, North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Okay. Central, South America, and the Caribbean. Thank you very much. At the end of the week, it may come out pretty easy. So, then I would like to ask observer parties who want to participate. Mexico. Yeah. Peru. Thailand, Cambodia, Portugal, United Arab Emirates, Canada, China, UK, Colombia, Republic of Korea, United States of America, Croatia, Russian Federation, Czech Republic, Netherlands, European Union, France, Germany, Argentina, Singapore, and Australia. Then India, Austria, Indonesia, Belgium, South Africa, Israel, Spain, Japan, Brazil, Sweden, and Switzerland. I think I have all parties. Then we would ask observer organizations to raise the flag. Ornamental Fish International, UNEP WCMC, Pan American Sanctuary Alliance, Parrot Breeders of South Africa, Defenders of Wildlife, Provision Reef, Pro-Wildlife, European Animal Research Association, Wildlife Conservation Society, IUCN, WWF, European Pet Organization, San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, German Society of Herpetology, ADM Capital Foundation, Society for Wildlife and Nature International, Humane Society, again this one, South African Taxidermy and Tannery Association, Species Survival Network, Organization of Professional Aviculturists, SUCO, Sustainable Users Network, International Fur Federation, IWMC, Association of Zoos and Aquariums, BirdLife International, Traffic, National Association for Biomedical Research, Born Free, Natural Resources Defense Council, and Center for Biological Diversity. FAO, did you want to say something or be part? Okay, be part, okay. Okay, I think we are about even, 33 parties and 33 observer organizations, so we can start working on that. The working group will be chaired by myself, and it will take place tomorrow afternoon in this room here. So now let's move on to the next agenda item, which is the first agenda item of the afternoon, agenda item 23, trade in stony corals. And I'll introduce the document. Document AC32, Doc 23.1 outlines the decisions on trade in stony corals that were adopted at COP19. It recalls that document COP19 Doc 46, which was submitted to COP19 by the European Union and its member states, presented several issues in relation to trade in stony corals, including confusion in relation to what coral rock means, what forms of coral rock are subject to the provisions of the Convention, and how coral rock should be reported in trade. Annex 1 to COP19 document proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 11.10 Ref COP 15 on trade in stony corals to address the issues raised, and these amendments are included as an annex to document AC32 Doc 23.1 for ease of reference. The COP19 document also proposed that the guidelines for the preparation and submission of CITES annual reports may need to be amended to provide additional clarification that coral rock, live rock, should not be reported as LEV, and that all live rock and substrate should be reported as COR to allow for more effective analysis of levels and patterns of trade. Furthermore, the document highlighted some coral identification challenges and the need for additional guidance materials. In order to implement Decision 19.177 on trade in stony corals, there is a requirement for the Animals Committee to consult with coral reef nations and coral reef experts. In this regard, the Animals Committee may wish to consider requesting the Secretariat to issue a notification to the parties on its behalf. In conclusion, at this meeting, the Animals Committee is invited to draft a notification to the parties seeking advice from coral reef nations and coral experts in the implementation of Decision 19177 and request the Secretariat to publish the notification on behalf of the committee, and B, establish an intersessional working group with a mandate to consider the responses to the notification to the parties referred in paragraph A above, make recommendations on trade in stony corals, including possible amendments to Resolution Conf 11.10 Ref COP 15, and the guidelines for the preparation and submission of CITES annual reports and annual illegal trade reports. And 3, provide an advice on conversion factors used to analyze trade in corals for the CITES review of significant trade process. And 4, present its findings to the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee. So that's what we will have to do. But before we go on and establish an in-session working group, I would like also to open the agenda item 23.2, also on trade in stony corals, which has been submitted by the European Union, because what is proposed in there might be included into the work of a working group. So please, European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU, and we would like for the document 23.2 submitted by the EU on reporting of trade in stony corals We suggest that it is included in the mandate of the working group that is suggested under document 23.1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with this, I open the floor for any comments from members on the two documents. Oceania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I agree that this is an issue that needs clarity, and I support the formation of an intersessional working group. However, I'm a little bit concerned about the formation of a in-session working group for this. Sounds more like maybe the role of a drafting group to draft a notification rather than a formal working group. And I see that that will be clashing in the timetable with presumably the reporting back from the Sharks Working Group on the review of SIG trade priorities for sharks. And I suspect marine people will have an interest in both camps. So I wonder whether, in fact, we're looking at a drafting group that could meet at lunchtime sometime or something like that, rather than a working group. I just wonder, I think I know the answer, but in terms of the notification, is it possible to sort of request expressions of interest from coral experts to participate in the working group as ex officio members, so that they're not formally part of the working group, but are able to contribute to the discussions of the working group, because we don't know necessarily who will volunteer at this meeting to be on that intersessional working group. And we don't, well, from the Oceania region, we have 8 stony coral nations, of which only 1 is represented here. So it makes it difficult for our region to participate in an intersessional working group when they're not here to go on. I know they can apply to you, Chair, to be a member, but I wonder whether the notification can also seek expressions of interest from regions and experts that couldn't attend this particular meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Oceania. I think you are right in both instances. So it is more of the drafting group, drafting the notification. And in this notification, I think it would make sense to invite experts also to express interest of participating in the intersessional working group. Yes. Yes, Central and South America and the Caribbean.
Thank you, Chair. The trade in stony corals is of concern for coral reef countries in Central America and the Caribbean. And that is because of the impacts of climate change, global warming, coral bleaching. These issues are not disappearing, but are increasing in intensity. And while we are contemplating developing guidelines and recommendations, it is my view that the continued trade in, particularly live stony corals, will have an impact in the future in these coral reef countries. And I think it's important that the committee reconsider these recommendations, or actually review again these recommendations in the interest of these stony coral countries, because a lot of these countries, and in the case of Belize, our coral reefs are so very important to the national economy. In fact, 40% of our of every dollar comes from tourism, who visit Belize, and a large percentage of that contribution to the economy is tourists who visit our coral reefs, do diving. And this is much of the case that happens in the Caribbean and other parts in Central America. So I'm advising that these recommendations should be reviewed with the objective of perhaps limiting to the lowest level possible of treating of live stony corals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Central and South America and the Caribbean. No more calls from the members. So I would turn now to observer parties. I see Mexico is asking for the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Our delegation is grateful for the preparation of this document and the information on the sending of a notification and setting up an intersessional working group. Should a working group be set up during the session, it would be impossible for our delegation to participate. So we will provide our comments on amendments to the resolution on coral rocks, and we would send them to the Secretariat for consideration in a working group, should it be established. And we'd also like to thank the European Union for document 23.2 on the reporting of trade in stony coral. And we suggest that its content be considered in work of an intersessional group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. Oh, yeah. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. My comment is related to document 23.2. The United States is generally supportive of the EU's suggested amendments to the guidelines for preparation and submission of CITES annual reports. And if I understood the EU's intervention correctly, we'll be discussing that in the working group. We did have some suggested changes, but we will discuss them there. Thank you.
Thank you. United States, I think we will include it in the work of the intersessional working group, so there will be the possibility to discuss and refine them there. Yeah. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Australia supports the recommendation in paper 23.1 to draft a notification to the parties in relation to decision 19.177 and to form an intersessional working group to work through relevant issues. In particular, we support the concept that an intersessional working group would allow adequate time to explore the complexity around terms, codes and definitions for stony corals and related products, and to consider the appropriateness of different units of measure for coral products. Further, an intersessional working group would allow for proper consideration of possible factors to be used when converting coral pieces to weights in a way that's reflective of modern coral trade. Australia has suffered considerably historically from changes with interpretation and applying the current guidelines in relation to reporting of trade in stony corals. As such, we welcome efforts to improve this reporting. Australia notes that the potential changes outlined in both paper 23.1 and 23.2 straddle the responsibilities of CITES scientific authorities and CITES management authorities, and consideration through an intersessional working group would ensure relevant expertise from both of these authorities can be engaged from interested countries. In short, we really support the New Zealand suggestion that if there is to be work done during this committee meeting, that a drafting group would be our preference rather than an in-session working group. Australia would like to join any working groups that are established. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. Any more parties, observer parties wishing to take the floor? I don't see any, so observer organizations. UNEP WCMC, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. UNEP WCMC would like to thank the European Union for document 23.2. We agree that there is a need for further consistency with reporting of trade in CITES-listed corals. Whilst we support the proposed text relating to Section 3 of the Guidelines for the Preparation and Submission of CITES annual reports, we do have some concerns about the proposed updates to Section 6A to replace alternative unit to additional unit. This would apply to trade in all parts and derivatives for all taxonomic groups, not just for corals, and would likely lead to some parties reporting trade in one unit and some parties reporting trade in 2 units, potentially leading to less consistent reporting and making trade analysis more difficult overall. We would also note that the CITES trade database is not currently structured to hold this information. And finally, Chair, we would like to indicate our willingness to join in-session or intersessional working group as decided. Thank you.
Thank you. UNEP WCMC. Other observer, yes. Provision Reef, you have the floor. Sorry, I can't hear you. You have to turn on your microphone.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. As coral harvesters with nearly 50 years experience, we've noticed a lot of changes, but in particular, there have been errors arising from the combination of terms and units that have badly affected Australia's coral export data, and we offer solutions and suggestions which may be able to fix some of these problems. It's not just limited to Australia, it is a global problem that we feel needs addressing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Ornamental Fish International, please.
Thank you, Chair. I am speaking on behalf also of the European Pet Organization, the Pet Advocacy Network, and the Ornamental Aquatic Trade Association. We appreciate the work that has gone into the production of both these documents. However, the documents deal with a complex topic, and any amendments need to reflect how the trade operates. We are concerned that some of the proposed changes are unclear and may be unnecessarily overcomplicating matters. Elements of the proposed amendments are potentially unenforceable and some risk unintended consequences. In many ways, making CITES regulations unclear and not in terms with the realities of what is traded and how specimens are traded. We have some small yet important suggested edits, but in the interest of time, we want to explain in detail in the drafting group and or in the intersessional working group that is going to be formed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ornamental Fish International. So with this, give me a couple of minutes to sort out exactly what we will be doing. Okay, so we will form a small in-session working group that has the mandate to draft the notification, and I would propose the membership to be, it's under your computer, thank you. The membership to be Central South America and the Caribbean. Mauro, I think, would be good. Then Oceania, with you, Robertson, the EU, UNEP WCMC, and Ornamental Fish International, who would together draft the notification that goes out with the inclusion of what Oceania also suggested. Yes, Oceania, please.
Can I suggest that Australia be a member of that drafting group as well?
Yeah,
so maybe an
of course. Yes, you mentioned you would want to be there, and it makes also sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me, may Provision Reef also be involved?
Okay, you know, usually drafting group are small groups. I don't want to have a huge group, but you are the last one that I will let in that working group, so that they have a manageable size to draft that notification. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. So that's the first part. And the second part is the intersessional working group, for which we have a mandate which reads, wait. Okay, so this working group shall review the responses to the notification to the parties concerning the implementation of Decision 19177, seeking advice from coral reef nations and coral experts. B, make recommendations on possible amendments to Resolution Conf 11.10 Ref COP 15 on trade in stony corals, and advise on the conversion factors used to analyze trade in corals for the review of significant trade process, and C, propose amendments to the guidelines for the preparation and submission of CITES annual reports and the guidelines for the preparation of and submission of CITES annual illegal trade report, because there you also have to report on trade in illegal trade in stony corals. So that would be the mandate of the intersession working group. You want me to read it out again? I think it would be helpful so that you can really capture what we are asking. So the intersession working group shall review the responses to the notification to the parties concerning the implementation of Decision 19177, seeking advice from coral reef nations and coral experts. B, make recommendations on possible amendments to Resolution Conf 11.10 Ref COP 15 on trade in stony corals, and advise on the conversion factors used to analyze trade in corals for the review of significant trade process, and propose amendments to the guidelines for the preparation and submission of CITES annual reports and the guidelines for the preparation and submission of CITES annual illegal trade reports. And of course, we will also add a bullet point that the working group should report back to the Animals Committee, to the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee, so that we can consider the work that is being done intersessionally. Okay, that's the mandate, so I would open the floor for expressions of interest from the members of the committee. Oceania, yes. I suppose Central and South America and the Caribbean would also want to be in the intersessional working group. So I think it would make sense if you work on the notification that you also participate in the working group intersessionally. Yes, okay. So observer parties, expression of interest, the Netherlands, the Maldives. Now I have to take it. Yes, United Kingdom, United States of America. Australia, India, Indonesia, Brazil, Malaysia. Oh yeah. I don't see what's right in front of my face. France, yes. Perfect. So, no other parties. So I open the floor for, oh, I see China. Yes, China. So observer organizations, please. I see FAO getting ready to raise the flag. UNEP WCMC, Provision Reef, Ornamental Fish International, Indonesian Coral Shell and Ornamental Fish Association, Pet Advocacy Network, Centre for Biological Diversity, and European Pet Organization. Association of Zoos and Aquariums also. Are we fine? Okay, perfect. And one last, the European Union, of course, should be part of it to discuss the proposed changes, of course, yes. Very good. So that concludes agenda. As chair, we have seen Arvin Diezmos, but unfortunately he is not in the room. So may I ask whether, we will try to get him on board, but that maybe Mauro could second him on the leading of this working group. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, then we move to agenda item 37, sharks and rays. And I give the floor to the Secretariat to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. Document AC32, Doc 37, Rev, was prepared by the Secretariat. At its 19th meeting, the Conference of the Parties adopted decisions 19.222 to 19.227 on sharks and rays, elasmobranchi species. In line with decisions 19.222 and 19.224, the Secretariat issued notification to the parties number 2023/027 on 16th of March, inviting parties to submit information related to conservation and management of sharks and rays with a deadline of the 31st of May. The notification also requested copies of non-detriment findings and conversion factors on sharks and rays. In total, 24 parties and 1 non-governmental organization provided valuable information, and the responses are collated in the revised Annex 2 to the document. And an overview of the responses is available in AC32 Inf. number 11. 7 parties shared 11 new non-detriment findings, and 4 parties submitted conversion factors, all of which are now available on the CITES Sharks and Rays portal. The Secretariat provides information from the CITES trade database on commercial trade in CITES listed species of sharks and rays since 2000 in Annex 3, and the raw data downloaded from the CITES trade database in Annex 4. For the implementation of decisions 19.223, the Secretariat has not secured funds to provide capacity building support directly to parties, but under decisions on non-detriment findings, an NDF workstream on NDFs from marine or aquatic species, including regional implications for shared species, introduction from the sea, the NDFs for marine or aquatic invertebrates is currently working on draft guidance for non-detriment findings that can be used for sharks and rays. The document also notes decisions on non-detriment findings for specimens of Appendix 2 species taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction that will also look at NDFs for introduction from the sea. A further study on the apparent mismatch between the trade and products of CITES listed species of sharks recorded in the CITES trade database, and what would be expected against the information available on catches of listed species, and the proposed solutions for the problem as mandated in Decision 19.223, paragraph C, will be prepared for review by the next Animals Committee. Furthermore, for the implementation of Decision 19.226, the Standing Committee has established an intersessional working group which directs the Standing Committee, in consultation with the Animals Committee, to discuss challenges related to the transport of biological samples for research and data collection purposes in the context of fisheries management. The Secretariat proposes the Animals Committee leads on the agenda items to represent the Animals Committee and the Standing Committee's intersessional working group. The Animals Committee is invited to A, consider this document and the scientific elements in its annexes and make recommendations as appropriate for consideration by the Standing Committee, and B, consider the proposal by the Secretariat in paragraph 22 of the document that the Animal Committee leads of Sharks and Rays represents the Animals Committee in the Standing Committee's intersessional working group to fulfill the implementation of paragraph D of Decision 19.226. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I would like to open the floor for comments from members of the committee on this matter. I see Oceania has asked for the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank the Secretariat very much for the paper that they've produced and the analysis that they've done as well. I also note from the discussion we had under agenda item 14 this morning about review of SIG trade that a task of the working group will be to effectively come up with a sort of prioritised list of country species combinations for sharks as one of our priorities from the Tuesday afternoon working group. So it's not specifically mandated to do that, but I believe that would be a useful contribution to the running of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Oceania. We do have wording for that ready. So, North America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The North American region supports the Animals Committee considering this document and the elements in its annexes and supports the Animals Committee making recommendations for consideration by the Standing Committee. The region would like to suggest that the Animals Committee consider focusing on recommendations that are the most relevant and the highest priority for improving the implementation of the sharks and rays listings. The region also supports the proposal by the Secretariat that the Animals Committee leads on sharks and rays represents the Animals Committee in the Standing Committee Intersessional Working Group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, North America. Any other member? I see Africa. Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. We reiterate the same comment we made on 14.2, which is the need to take into account shark and ray species from the viewpoint of species country combinations. We hope that in the working group we can come back to this and cover it in detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Africa. We do have wording for the working group, in-session working group, to have a look at this matter. Yes. So I open the floor for observer parties who may wish to intervene. I see Peru. Peru, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Thank you, Chair. We thank the Secretariat for drawing up the document and take note of the document and its annexes. And we recommend supporting that those the lead roles for the Animals Committee take part in the working group. And should a working group be set up, we'd like to take part. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. Any other observer party asking for the floor? I see China. China, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. China noted that large amount of shark species being listed into the Appendix 2 after COP19. And China also noted that while some parties have completed their NDF, and some range states may have difficulty completing the NDF process. China supports the Secretariat to continue to provide support and assistance to these parties in implementing the Appendix 2 listing. And China recognized that NDF is one important measure to ensure the sustainable use of sharks. And China remains committed in our enforcement effort to combat illegal wildlife trade in sharks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, China, for this. I don't see any other party observer asking for the floor, so I open the floor for observer organizations. Okay. Nobody asking for the floor, so just let me shortly consult with the Secretariat. Okay, so we have certainly agreed that the leads identified in document 8.2 on sharks will represent the Animals Committee on the Standing Committee Working Group. And I would suggest that we get some more feedback on the document that we form an in-session working group. I suspect everyone is waiting to have an in-session working group. That's why they were probably reluctant to say something on the floor. So I would propose an in-session working group with the mandate as follows. The in-session working group shall consider document AC32, Doc 37 Ref, and the scientific elements in its annexes, the information on elasmobranchi SPP in document AC32, Doc 14.2, and any other relevant information, and B, make recommendations as appropriate on any species counter combinations that should be considered under the species selection process for the review of significant trade. C, identify information pertinent to the development of guidance on non-detriment findings for sharks and rays that should be considered in the ongoing or planned work described in AC32, Doc 37 Ref, paragraphs 11 and 12. Identify information on gaps and needs for the identification of CITES listed shark products in trade. E, review capacity needs identified by parties, especially as it relates to assisting developing countries and small island developing states in the implementation of the Convention for Sharks and Rays, with a particular focus on the species included at the 19th meeting of the Conference of Parties, and F, draft recommendations for consideration by the Animals Committee and submission to the Standing Committee as appropriate. So that would be the mandate. Now I'm asking for expressions of interest to participate in the working group, and I'm looking first at the members. Oceania, Africa, Central and South America and the Caribbean, then I would open the floor for expression of interest from observer parties. So it's the Maldives, Malaysia, Netherlands, New Zealand, Panama, Peru, Portugal, Canada, United Arab Emirates, UK, China, Republic of Korea, Tanzania, United States, Namibia, Saudi Arabia, European Union, Germany, Argentina, Australia, India, Indonesia, Israel, Spain, Japan, Brazil. Okay. I think I didn't forget anybody, overlook anybody, so now I open the floor for observer organizations. Oceana, Defenders of Wildlife, FAO, Wildlife Conservation Society, IUCN, WWF, Save Our Seas Foundation, Zoological Society of London, Shark Advocates International, Florida International University, Shark Trust, Global Guardian Trust, Humane Society International, IFAW, the Blue Resources Trust, IWMC, Traffic, Bloom Association. That's it. Southeast Asian Fisheries Development Center. That's the last one. Okay, we have a good balance with 26 parties and members, and in addition, and 19 observer organizations. And the working group will be chaired by the lead on this issue, Hugh Robertson from Oceania. And Mauro will also assist you on this matter. Perfect. Very good. Just to be sure, please, can you read out the composition as decided?
Yes, Chair. So the two chairs would be the representative of Oceania and the representative for Central and South America and the Caribbean, and I also have as a member the alternate representative for Africa. Among parties, I have Maldives, Malaysia, Netherlands, New Zealand, Panama, Peru, Portugal, Canada, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, China, Republic of Korea, United Republic of Tanzania, United States of America, Namibia, Saudi Arabia, European Union, Germany, Argentina, Australia, India, Indonesia, Israel, Spain, Japan, and Brazil. And for the observers, I have Oceania, Defenders of Wildlife, FAO, WCS, IUCN, WWF, Save Our Seas Foundation, ZSL, Shark Advocates, Florida International University, Shark Trust, Global Guardian Trust, HSI, IFAW, Blue Resources Trust, IWMC, Traffic, Bloom Association, and CIFDEC. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So with this, we can close the item and move on to the next item 25, review of CITES provisions related to trade in specimens of animals and plants not of wild source. And we turn our attention to document 25.1, which I will introduce. So document PC 26, Doc 23, AC 32, Doc 25.1 address matters to consider in the implementation of decisions 19179 to 19180 on review of CITES provisions related to trade in specimens of animals and plants not of wild source. During the previous intersessional period, committee members noted that the committees were not able to fully implement the decision in terms of the identification of key scientific issues and challenges in the application of the Convention to non-wild specimens. The former Standing Committee Working Group that considered this matter during the previous intersessional period also did not consider plants. It was therefore agreed to propose the extension of the decision to further work beyond COP19, resulting in the adoption of the current decisions. As the Animals and Plants Committees are directed to consider the elements of Decision 19180 separately and together, the committee should consider the most effective way of doing this. The committee should take into consideration the fact that the Standing Committee established an intersessional working group chaired by Belgium and Canada, and that the Standing Committee Working Group has initiated its work. A draft roadmap has been shared with members of the Standing Committee Intersessional Working Group and is contained in information document AC32 Inf 5. The co-chair of the Standing Working Group, Standing Committee Working Group Canada, is attending the meeting, and since the update provided by the co-chair during PC 26 informed discussions during PC 26. I will invite Canada after the introduction of the document to provide the Animals Committee with a similar update. At the 26th meeting, the Plants Committee established a joint intersession working group on trade in specimens not of wild source that will work separately and jointly with the mandate to consider the key elements in the current implementation of Article 7, paragraphs 4 and 5 for animals and plants, respectively, in the current applicable resolutions. Determine if there is a need to implement Article 7, paragraphs 4 and 5 differently for either animal specimens from species bred in captivity or plant specimens that are artificially propagated than what is outlined in existing resolutions, and provide their recommendations to the Standing Committee in time for its 78th meeting. Provide any other scientific advice and guidance on CITES provisions concerning trade in non-wild specimens of CITES listed animal and plant species to the Standing Committee upon request and as appropriate, and report on the progress of to the joint session of the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee and 27th meeting of the Plants Committee. The recommendations of the Plants Committee are also contained in the Executive Summary PC 26 Sum 3 and the information document AC 32 Inf 6. Based on the discussions during PC 26, it was clear that there was a need to discuss the plant and animals matters separately to ensure all fauna and flora related aspects are addressed, recalling that plants were not covered during the previous intersessional period, but that joint discussions will also be required among others share the inputs prepared by the group during separate discussions and facilitate the submission of a combined document for consideration by the joint ACPC meeting in 2024. The working group was formed. We will come back to that when we form our, when we add the Animals Committee, interested parties and organizations. The committee also noted, Plants Committee also noted that the final membership of the joint intersession working group would be published later on, and the committee agreed to nominate the chair of the Plants Committee of the Joint Intersession Working Group to participate in the Standing Committee's Intersession Working Group and invited the co-chairs of the Standing Committee's Intersession Working Group to work closely with the ACPC Joint Intersession Working Group in implementing their mandates. You see, it's quite complicated if you have to do things together and separately. Taking into consideration the roadmap in the information document and the mandate agreed by the Plants Committee, the committee could consider focusing its discussions on the mandates as agreed by the Plants Committee. I would like now to invite Canada as co-chair of the Standing Committee Working Group to share information relating to the proposed approach. So Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and allow me to take a moment to congratulate you and your Vice Chair on your re-election. We're looking forward to working under your wise guidance. So as you noted, the Standing Committee struck a working group to address Decision 19.179, and it is co-chaired by Canada and Belgium. Part of the mandate of the working group was to develop a roadmap in consultation with the Animals and Plants Committees. So as you noted, the co-chairs prepared a roadmap, which is found in Information Document 5. In the preparation, my co-chair and I designed a roadmap that included, as a first step, to take a step backwards and understand the viewpoints underlying parties' use of resolutions and the convention in its application to captive bred and artificially propagated species. The intent was to have that fundamental understanding in mind when tackling the bulk of the issues which are found in stage 4 of the roadmap. Feedback on the roadmap from the working group so far has been mixed, and the co-chairs are considering how to respond and adapt the roadmap, taking into account the views heard by the working group members and the views we will hear here from the Animals Committee. Notably, in the roadmap, the co-chairs were proposing that the Animals and Plants Committee could provide input on questions of conservation risk and how they vary between plants and animals as part of fulfilling their mandate in Decision 19.180. And we appreciate that the mandate for the intersessional working group proposed by the Plants Committee provides opportunities for the two scientific committees to provide us with that advice. So, in really conclusion, Chair, we would value the insights from the Animals Committee now in order to work on updating the roadmap, and we will value the work of the joint working group if agreed here as well. We, as the co-chairs of the Standing Committee Working Group, have already committed to work closely with the Plants Committee lead on this issue, and we will also commit to working closely with the Animals Committee lead in order to ensure good cohesion between the working groups, which, as you know, can be quite complex. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada, for this input and update. So now I would open the floor for comments from the members of the Animals Committee. I don't see any member asking for the floor, so I take it that you agree with the proposal by the Plants Committee to form an intersessional working group with the mandate as read out. Then I would open the floor for comments from observer parties. I don't see any, and then I would open the floor for comments from observer organizations. Okay, Ornamental Fish International, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm again speaking on behalf also of the European pet organization, the Pet Advocacy Network, and the Ornamental Aquatic Trade Association. We have two particular areas of high concern that we think the Animals Committee need to consider, specifically the marking of small-bodied animals and the issue of legal acquisition findings. The potential benefits of supporting and enabling captive breeding programs which reduce pressure on wild populations and help minimize illegal trade should be acknowledged and supported. We would appreciate, therefore, being part of the intersessional working group. Thank you.
Thank you, Ornamental Fish International. Okay, with this, I think we agree on the decisions taken by the Plants Committee to form an intersessional working group with the mandate as read out. I will now read out which parties are already a member of this intersessional working group and also which IHOs and NGOs. So it is Australia, Canada, European Union, Germany, India, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, Republic of Korea, Russian Federation, South Africa, UK, and United States. Then we have United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP WCMC, Euromed, and Traffic. So now I would open the floor for expressions of interest of parties who are not already member of this intersessional working group. I see Brazil. Okay. So, I forgot the members. Sorry about that. If you have interest in joining that intersessional working group, please show your placards. Okay. Yes, it's Colombia. Yes, thank you. Colombia is noted. China. Okay, then we can move over to observer organizations. We have heard interest from Ornamental Fish International, Parrots Breeders Association of South Africa, FAO, Wildlife WCS, WWF, European Pet Association, Species Survival Network, Organization of Professional Agriculturists, Sustainable Users Network, IWMC, Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So as leads for this topic, we have the representative of North America, Ezequiel Benitez, and from Europe, Dagmar Sikoa. And maybe a further that thing we have to think about, besides the working group, is that the Plants Committee also agreed that they nominated the chair of the Plants Committee. No. So the Plants Committee also agreed that the chair of this now formed working group would represent the Animals Committee in the Standing Committee's intercession working group. So that's what the Plants Committee agreed upon. And we have to say if we agree on the same representation to make sure that there is a two-way communication, would certainly make sense. Yes, Europe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Matthias. We will be involved with Ezequiel in review of significant trade, so could you give us some time to reflect or maybe to ask other colleagues to take this particular agenda item, because I don't know whether our capacities will allow for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Europe. Maybe there's a confusion. What the working group that we struck will be intersessionally. It will not be in session, so you won't have to do work on this topic here at the meeting. It's really for intersession work then.
Yeah, well, I will not be personally able to take the intersessional working group, and I don't know.
Yes, I mean, we have decided on a process to replace you in that function, so it will be the newly appointed lead plus the lead of North America who will be doing that representation. Yes, North America?
Yes, I'm trying to check if I am in that list for this specific topic, because I don't recall. I'm mainly working with and other topics, so it took me by surprise at this stage.
Well, in document 8.2, where we have the leads, it is review of CITES provisions related to trade in specimens of animals and plants not of wild source. It's you and Dagmar which are the leads. Sorry about that.
Okay, if that's the case, I'll do my best.
Okay, thank you very much.
I see it. I got it.
Okay, so we can move over to the next agenda item, which is 25.2, considerations and recommendations for ranching of marine species. And this document has been submitted by the United States, I think. And I would like to ask the United States to present the document to us.
Thank you, Chair. The United States welcomes the opportunity to introduce AC 32 Document 25.2, Considerations and Recommendations for Ranching of Marine Species. We wish to explain our rationale for the document and seek support of the Animals Committee for several recommendations. As background, ranching was originally introduced for application to crocodilians, transferred from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2. Among other requirements, the original purpose of the term included ensuring that the ranching program must be primarily beneficial to the conservation of local populations, having in place appropriate inventories, harvest controls, and mechanisms to monitor the wild numbers of animals, are returned to the wild if necessary and where appropriate, provide evidence that the taking of the wild will have no significant detrimental impact on wild populations, and demonstrate benefits to the wild population through reintroduction or other means. Even so, Source Code R has been increasingly used for export permits for taxa included in Appendix 2 without an assessment of the suitability of its application or potential for subsequent negative impacts on the species conservation status. The United States is concerned that Source Code R may be currently being misapplied to marine species. According to the definition of ranching under CITES, specimens taken as eggs or juveniles should be removed from the wild at the life stage where they would have a very low probability of surviving to adulthood. However, as demonstrated in the publication found in Annex 1 to Doc 25.2, in the case of humphead wrasse, fish are being harvested after settlement when mortality rates in the wild are relatively low and there is greater probability of surviving to adulthood. This is not only contrary to the definition of ranching, but it may also negatively affect populations and may not be biologically sustainable. Another concern is the lack of sufficient monitoring and assessment of the impacts of ranching on the conservation of marine species. As discussed in the publication found in Annex 1, humphead wrasse have been exported using Source Code R in significant quantities in the absence of a non-detriment finding or consideration of mortality rates in captivity. When trading in specimens of ranch species as defined under CITES, the provisions of Articles 3, 4, and 5 of the Convention continue to apply. For Appendix 2 listed species, this includes the requirement for making NDFs under Article 4 to ensure that the trade will not be detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild. Finally, the United States is also concerned about the difficulty distinguishing between specimens of CITES listed species sourced from the wild relative to specimens of the same species that are sourced from ranching operations. Given this challenge, it is possible that wild specimens are being traded as ranch specimens and may be subject to less monitoring. With these concerns in mind, the United States requests the Animals Committee support several recommendations to address this issue. First, the Animals Committee is requested to recommend that guidelines for the making of NDFs for specimens of marine species sourced from ranching operations are needed. Second, we recommend that the making of NDFs for specimens of marine species sourced from ranching operations be considered at the upcoming Global CITES expert workshop on NDFs and any recommendations put forward for the animals' consideration from that workshop. Finally, based on the results of the Global NDF workshop, the United States recommends that the Animals Committee ask the Standing Committee to recommend putting forward draft decisions for consideration to COP20 to address the issue of ranching of marine species. Among the actions called for include the development of guidance for the ranching of marine species. Such guidance could define the appropriate life stage or stages at which various commercially important marine species may qualify for ranching. The guidance could also identify other factors that may affect a determination that a specimen qualifies as source code R, taking into consideration the definition of ranching under Res Conf 12.3, revised COP 19. We call on our CITES colleagues to support the recommendations put forward to help ensure that ranching is biologically sustainable, beneficial to the conservation of marine species, and is compliant with the convention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. We have heard the recommendations coming out of the document that are contained in paragraph 14 and 15 of the document, so I would open the floor for comments from members of the committee on these recommendations. North America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The North American region welcomes the opportunity to discuss Document AC 25.2, Considerations and Recommendations for Ranching of Marine Species. Based on the information provided in the document, the North American region is concerned that the source code R may currently be misapplied to some marine species, and that challenges with monitoring of ranch specimens, assessment of its impacts on conservation, and traceability could be lacking proper attention. With these concerns in mind, the North American region suggests the Animals Committee support recommendations in paragraphs 14 and 15 of the document to recognize and address the need for guidance on the issue of ranching of marine species and making of NDF for such specimens based on the result of the upcoming Global CITES Experts NDF workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, North America. Did another member want to take the floor on this matter? I don't see anybody asking for the floor, so I would look now to observer parties. If they wish to make comments. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the United States for preparing this important document. We agree that source code R should only be used to describe specimens that truly fulfill the definition of ranch specimens as agreed by the parties in Resolution Conf 12.3 and must be accompanied by a valid non-detriment finding demonstrating that the proposed trade will not be detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild. Noting the challenges that scientific authorities face in fulfilling these requirements and the wider concerns around the lack of sufficient monitoring and assessment of these practices on the conservation status of populations, then we would support the development of these guidelines for the making of NDFs for specimens of marine species sourced from ranching operations. Recognising that Different taxon will have different life history traits. It is likely to be necessary, we feel, to pick several case studies in order to provide meaningful NDF guidance for marine specimens in trade. One of the factors being to define what we mean by very low probability of surviving to adulthood. So in summary, we support the consideration of NDFs for specimens of marine species sourced from ranching operations at the upcoming Global CITES Expert Workshop on NDFs. Thank you.
Thank you. UK? Any other party wanting to take the floor? Peru, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chair. We thank the United States for the document that has been presented, and we support the recommendations in the document in order to adequately implement the source code R for marine species. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. Now I would like to open the floor for observer organizations. Zoological Society of London, is that true? It's IUCN there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This intervention is given on behalf of IUCN, Traffic, WWF and ZSL. And it is our first. We'd like to congratulate you and the Vice Chair on re-election and thank the Secretariat in Switzerland for organising the meeting. With regard to the recommendations to consider creating guidelines for both determining that a specimen qualifies as source code R and the making of NDFs for specimens of marine species sourced from ranching operations, we would support this proposition but encourage parties to consider expanding their deliberations to include diadromous and freshwater species as well as marine. This would ensure that the guidelines are fully representative of the range of aquatic species affected by this issue at present and any that may be added to CITES appendices in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, IUCN. Any other observer organization? So let me quickly reflect on that. I think we have broad support for the issue. The only thing is we have a bit of timing problem. Because what is being asked is that the Animals Committee consider the development of such guidance, and at the same time we are asked to make sure it is on the NDF workshop and then may use these results to propose to the next COP the development of these guidelines. So I think we do have a sort of a timing problem. So I would suggest that we, the Animals Committee, should make sure that the topic is being treated at the NDF workshop, to make sure that there is deliberation on that on the workshop, and based on these results at the next Animals Committee, then propose a way forward for the COP. Because we don't know yet what will be decided and discussed at the NDF workshop and what will be coming out exactly for this topic. So we can only look at that when it has been done, which will be at the next Animals Committee. We will have the results of the NDF workshop, and then we can propose a way forward for the COP. Does that make sense? United States, mainly, I would like to ask you if you can agree on such a way forward that we will reconsider the issue at the next Animals Committee, but we still, as Animals Committee, we would urge the NDF workshop to have a look at the issue.
Yes, Chair, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. So if I see nodding from my colleagues from the Animals Committee, then it's also endorsed by the committee. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so I would, with the indulgence of the nomenclature specialist, ask him to present the first three documents, 45.1, 45.2, and 45.3, so that we can have a look at these issues as a first step.
Thank you, Chair. And this is going to be painfully long, so I beg your indulgence. Document AC32, Doc 45.1 on the nomenclature of Appendix 3 listings provides information relating to Decision 18.313 Rev COP19. This decision instructs the Animals and Plants Committees to evaluate how nomenclature changes affect Appendix 3 listings within the framework of the current guidance in paragraph 2G of Resolution Conf 12.11 Rev COP19 on standard nomenclature. Further guidance and recommendations that address how such nomenclature changes are to be handled should be proposed for consideration by the Standing Committee, which will consider the matter under Decision 18.314, Rev COP19. Taxonomic and nomenclature changes, such as the merging and splitting of species, redefine that species and can alter the range states in which the redefined species occur and where a split-out species occurs. Some general background information on this is provided in paragraph 6 to 9 of the current document. The process to update the nomenclature of species and higher taxa listed in CITES Appendices 1 and 2 is well established. However, due to the nature of Appendix 3 and its specific process of including and excluding species in it by individual parties, applying that same process could create unforeseen outcomes. Detailed information on the effects of taxonomic nomenclatural changes on species listed in Appendix 3 is provided in paragraphs 10 to 21. Paragraph 22 therefore suggests that a modified approach may be needed to be applied to take the particular conditions of Appendix 3 into account when nomenclatural changes are proposed for any of its species. Under this approach, the Animals or Plants Committees can be consulted to determine if the change would alter the scope of protection for fauna and flora under the Convention. If the proposed nomenclature changes would lead to inclusion or deletion of species or populations in the appendices, the Secretariat could consult the listing party and other affected range states, and Appendix 3 could be amended based on feedback from the parties. Alternatively, the Secretariat could inform the listing party about the nomenclature changes and its implications, and invite the party to consult with affected range states and submit a request to amend the Appendix 3 listing. As recommended in paragraph 23, the Animals Committee at this time is invited to review the document and make recommendations as appropriate, and to consider submitting an updated version of the present document to the Standing Committee for its consideration. Dear Chair, I note that at its 26th meeting 2 weeks ago, the Plants Committee established an intersessional working group to consider this matter. As such, I suggest for your consideration the establishment of a working group with an intersessional mandate of the Animals Committee, which can then coordinate or join with the corresponding working group of the Plants Committee. Then, per your request, jumping ahead to document 42.2, On higher taxon listings in the appendices, this provides information relating to decision 19.272. The decision instructs the Animals and Plants Committees to review the impacts of existing and future higher taxon listings in the appendices within the framework of the provisions in Annex 3 of Resolution Conf 9.24, RevCop 17, on criteria for amendment of Appendices 1 and 2. Further guidance and recommendations as necessary should be proposed for consideration by the Standing Committee as it addresses its decision 19.273. Higher taxon listings in the appendices enable a group of taxonomically related species to be listed under a single entry. These are usually species that look alike and or face similar effects from international trade. Higher taxon listings also provide stability to the appendices and associated national legislation when taxonomic or nomenclatural changes occur to the species contained within the higher taxon. However, over the years, a number of cases of higher taxon listings have created complex situations, emphasizing the need to consider the impacts of existing and future higher taxon listings. Paragraph 5 of the current document 45.2 provides 3 examples that illustrate such cases. In these cases, it is important to consider whether proposed amendments to the appendices are substantive or non-substantive in nature. The difference between substantive and non-substantive changes and their implications for implementation of the Convention is summarized in paragraphs 7 and 8 of the current document. When a change in the name of a taxon is proposed, the original intent of the proposals to list the taxon should be considered. Also, the previous adoption of standard nomenclature references assists in determining whether the scope of the taxon will be redefined through any proposed change in a taxon name. The Animals Committee is invited to review the scientific implications and impacts of higher taxon listings in the appendices. In addition, the committee is invited to consider whether the difference between a higher taxon listing and a listing of all individual species contained within that higher taxon is sufficiently substantive to require a formal proposal to change a listing in the appendices, or that a complete list of species may be replaced with the listing of the higher taxon under the mandate of Resolution Conf 12.11, RevCop 19, on standard nomenclature. Again, Mr. Chair, at its recent meeting, the Plants Committee decided that the matter would be best considered by an intersessional working group that would coordinate or join with the corresponding working group from the Animals Committee. And I recommend that such an intersessional working group be established to develop draft recommendations and guidance to be presented to the joint session of AC 33 and PC 27, scheduled to take place in 2024. And finally, on document 45.3, on the development of a standardized global checklist of species, this provides information relating to decision 19.274. This decision instructs the Animals and Plants Committees, through their nomenclature specialists, to participate in initiatives to develop a standardized global checklist of species and to report on progress at COP20. Paragraphs 3 to 5 of this document elaborate on the involvement of the 2 nomenclature specialists in ongoing global initiatives aimed at producing global consensus classifications for plants and animals, and highlights the potential benefits for CITES. The Animals Committee is invited to take note of this document. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nomenclature Specialist, for the speedy presentation. As you have mentioned, the Plants Committee proposed to have a joint intersessional nomenclature working group with a mandate to look at the 2 issues on nomenclature of Appendix 3 listings and higher taxon listings, and the mandate is contained in the INF document 6 that has been, that we mentioned several times. So my question to the committee is there any objection to go the same way meaning forming such a working group, a joint intersessional working group with the mandate as proposed in the INF document. I don't see any member objecting, so I think that's the way we will go for these two items, 45.1 and 45.2. Observer parties, do you have any objections if we go along what the Plans Committee proposed for the treatment of these two issues? Don't see anybody objecting. I see Russian Federation. You have the floor.
If possible, couple of comments on this issue. I mean the document 45.2 and the punct 11. Should conflict arise regarding the choice of taxonomic authority? In my opinion, it is an important question because when you are preparing such a global list, you should have some expert institution which is world known, or you should apply to world expert on a particular group to be sure in the species which are included there. And another comment on the document 45.3, punct 5. During the development of global checklist of animals in plants, it will be built a general list of animal and plants and other organisms. But what is under the name of other organisms there? Is there microorganisms, bacteria, or viruses, or what else? But they are not in danger at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russia. I think I can ask the nomenclature specialist to clarify these two issues.
I can indeed. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Russia, for these questions. In cases where there are conflicting taxonomic positions for a CITES listed species, the task of the nomenclature specialists and the working group supporting the specialist is to seek the best available information and either come to a decision or defer a decision until later when more information becomes available. With regard to other groups of organisms in global standardized checklist, this is a matter where these global lists are developing standardized checklists beyond animals and plants and also include fungi, include microorganisms, viruses, and so on. That does not mean that they are directly applied to CITES, but it is a global checklist where, as and when needed, CITES can draw from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So I don't see any objection in going forward with this joint intersessional working group. Server organizations, I also don't see anybody raising the flag. With the indulgence of the interpreters, I would like to finish this because I think that is going to be a rather quick thing. So I hope with their indulgence we can add a couple of minutes to finish that.
Yes, Chair, of course.
Thank you very much. So we have the mandate for this joint intersession working group that will deal with the agenda items 45.1 and 45.2. The mandate is to review the scientific implications and impacts of existing and future higher taxon listings in the appendices, taking into consideration the aspects raised in document PC Doc 42.2, AC 32 Doc 45.2, and review and revise document PC 26 Doc 42.1 and AC 32 Doc 45.1, and C, develop draft recommendations and guidance for consideration at the joint session of the 27th meeting of the Plants Committee and the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee scheduled to take place in 2024. So that's the mandate. And now I I think it's clear that the chair from the Plants Committee will be Peter Paul van Dijk. Animals Committee, sorry. It's getting late. So it will be Peter Paul co-chairing with Ronel Klopper from the Plants Committee. Then members from the committee wishing to participate, please indicate if you want to participate in the discussion. Okay, observer parties. Austria. Yeah. New Zealand, Saudi Arabia, Germany. You are already from the Plants Committee side on the working group? France? Yes, already there. Yeah, Zimbabwe is not there yet. Then we have China. And India. Huh? Russian Federation, Brazil, and Japan. Okay, then observer, oh sorry, Peru, oh sorry. I always don't turn my head enough to see you, sorry about that. Peru. Okay, this is parties. Then I would open the floor for observer organizations. Yes, Parrot Breeders Association of South Africa, Provide Life, IUCN, WWF, HSI. There I always have problems because it's so small. National, no, South African Taxidermy and you were very done. Oh, it's really getting late. I think we know who you are. Anybody else? BirdLife International. Oh yes, you have been holding up a long time already. Center for Biological Diversity. Can the secretary maybe, are you ready to read them out?
Yes, Chair, I'll read out both those that expressed an interest at the Plants Committee and also those who expressed an interest today. So for the parties, I have Canada, the European Union, France, Georgia, Germany, India, Madagascar, Mexico, UK, US, Austria, New Zealand, Saudi Arabia, Zimbabwe, China, Russian Federation, Brazil, Japan, and Peru. And on the observer side, I have UNEP WCMC, IWMC World Conservation Trust, SSN, Parrot Breeders Association of South Africa, Pro Wildlife, IUCN, WWF, HSI, South African Taxidermy and Tannery, BirdLife International, and the Center for Biological Diversity.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that is then done for agenda items 45.1 and 2, which leaves us just the last one, 45.3, and we are asked to note this document. So I would open the floor for any additional comments on development of a standardized global checklist of species. Members? No comments. Observer parties? Sorry? Peru, are you asking for the floor, or is this a legacy? Okay, good, perfect. So no comments from observer parties, observer organizations? Also none, so the document, then the Animals Committee is noting that document. So we have almost finished today's schedule. We will reconvene tomorrow morning and start with agenda item 46. Do we have any announcements from the Secretariat?
Just from the interpreter. From the interpreter, just to when people are making intervention.
Thank you, Chair. Two small comments. Observers and parties are kindly invited not to distribute documents in the plenary room. We have made available tables just outside the room for any documentation you would like to share. So please use those tables. And the second announcement is that there is a side event on the third floor in the room EF that starts in about 15 minutes. And the title of this is FAO Strengthen Institutional Cooperation for Better Sustainability and Legality Findings in the Fisheries Sector. You're all invited to make your way up to the third floor. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you. One last thing, something that I just did, that the interpreters would ask anybody who takes the floor to put aside the headsets, because it may give a feedback, and that's very unpleasant for the interpreters if it screams in their headsets. So please, when you make an intervention, put aside your headsets tomorrow. Okay, so yes, I would like also to thank the interpreters for their indulgence, for letting me advance a bit. So thank you very much, and see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, one last announcement. We'll put the times for the working groups, in-session working groups that have been established. We'll be putting on the screens in the center shortly, and we'll also make them available online. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice evening.